the moment Bridget Vale stepped into the gleaming lobby of Oakhaven Industries. She had no idea that the emergency call summoning her to fix their computer systems would change her entire life. Her worn laptop bag hung heavy on her shoulder as she approached the reception desk, trying not to feel intimidated by the marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle. As a freelance IT consultant, she had worked with plenty of successful companies, but this was different. Oakhaven Industries was one of the fastest-growing manufacturing firms on the West Coast, and their systems had apparently crashed during a critical product launch. "Bridget Vale for the IT emergency," she told the receptionist, a polished woman in her 40s who immediately brightened. "Thank goodness you're here. Mr. Oakes has been pacing his office all morning. Follow me." They took the elevator to the 20th floor, and Bridget ran through possible scenarios in her mind. Server failure, network breach, database corruption. She had handled them all before, though never with quite this much pressure. The fee they had offered over the phone was 3 times her usual rate, which meant they were desperate. The receptionist led her down a hallway lined with modern art and stopped at a massive oak door. She knocked twice. "Come in," a voice called from inside, and something about that voice made Bridget's heart skip. It was familiar somehow, though she could not place it. The receptionist opened the door and gestured for Bridget to enter. She stepped into a spacious corner office with windows on 2 sides, taking in the view before her eyes landed on the man standing behind the desk. He was tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair and striking blue eyes that widened the moment he saw her. "Bridget," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. "Bridget Vale," she stared at him, her mind racing through memories until suddenly it clicked. Those eyes, that smile. "William Oakes, oh my God, Willie." He laughed, and the sound transported her back 20 years to the neighborhood where they had grown up together. They had been inseparable from ages 5 to 12, running through backyards, building forts and promising to be best friends forever. Then his family had moved across the country, and they had lost touch in the way kids do before social media made it impossible to truly lose anyone. "I go by William now," he said, walking around the desk. But hearing Willie again brings back memories. "I cannot believe this," Bridget said, setting down her laptop bag. "You're the CEO, you're Mr. Oakes, guilty. And you're the IT genius everyone said could fix anything. I should have known from your last name, but Vale is not exactly uncommon." He studied her face with an expression she could not quite read. "You look exactly the same. Well, not exactly. Better. More grown up." She felt her cheeks warm. William Oakes had definitely grown up too. The gangly boy who used to challenge her to climbing contests had become a man who looked like he belonged on magazine covers. His suit was perfectly tailored, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had built something significant. "We should probably focus on your emergency," Bridget said, trying to regain her professional composure. "Your receptionist said your systems crashed." William's expression shifted to concern. "Right. Yes. Our entire network went down 2 hours ago, right in the middle of our product presentation to our biggest potential client. We have a team presentation scheduled to resume in 4 hours, and we need access to all our design files, production data, and financial projections. Show me your server room." They spent the next 20 minutes walking through the company's technical setup while Bridget asked rapid-fire questions. William stayed with her the entire time, explaining what had happened and what they had already tried. She noticed how he spoke about his company with genuine passion, describing the eco-friendly manufacturing processes they had pioneered and the jobs they had created. "This is your baby," she observed as she plugged her laptop into their main server. I started Oakhaven 6 years ago in a garage, William admitted. We make sustainable building materials. Sounds boring, but it turns out people care about reducing carbon footprints. We grew faster than I ever imagined. Bridget began running diagnostics, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Not boring at all. My brother is an architect. He talks about this stuff constantly. You have a brother. What happened to being an only child who did not have to share toys? She smiled at the memory. My parents adopted Marcus when I was 15. Best surprise of my life, even if I did have to start sharing. They fell into an easy conversation as she worked, trading updates about their lives. She learned that he had gone to MIT, worked in Boston for a few years, then returned to the West Coast to start his company. He learned that she had studied computer science at the University of Washington and had been freelancing for 3 years after getting tired of corporate politics. Found it, Bridget announced after 45 minutes of intense focus. Someone installed an unauthorized software update that conflicted with your security protocols. Your system basically locked itself down to prevent what it thought was a breach. Can you fix it? Already doing it. William watched over her shoulder as she worked, and she was acutely aware of his presence. He smelled like cedar and something crisp she could not identify. Every time he leaned closer to see her screen, her concentration wavered. You always were good with computers, William said. Remember when you fixed my dad's laptop when you were 11? He was convinced it was dead. I remember he gave me $20 and I thought I was rich. You spent it all on candy and shared it with me. You had a broken arm and could not ride your bike to the store. I felt bad for you. He laughed. I milked that broken arm for all it was worth that summer. The servers began humming back to life, and Bridget ran a series of checks to ensure everything was functioning properly. You're back online. All your files should be accessible now. But William, you need better IT security protocols. This could have been prevented. Can you set that up for us? She hesitated. I could recommend someone. I usually do emergency fixes, not long-term contracts. Why not? I like the freedom of freelancing. Different projects, different challenges. William leaned against the desk, studying her with those intense blue eyes. What if I told you I could offer you challenges? We're expanding fast. I need someone I can trust to build our IT infrastructure properly. Someone who understands both the technical side and the human side. William, we just reconnected after 20 years. You do not know if you can trust me professionally. I trusted you with my entire Game Boy collection when we were kids. You never once deleted my saved games, even when you were mad at me for tracking mud through your fort. That tells me everything I need to know. Bridget laughed despite herself. That is not exactly a professional reference. Have dinner with me tonight. Let me tell you about what we're building here. If you're not interested after that, at least we'll have caught up properly. She knew she should say no. Mixing old friendships with business was rarely a good idea. But something in his expression, eager and hopeful and so reminiscent of the boy who used to wait at her fence every morning, made her nod. Dinner. But I'm paying for my own meal. We'll discuss that, William said with a grin. They exchanged phone numbers and Bridget packed up her equipment. William insisted on walking her back to the lobby himself, pointing out different departments and introducing her to employees they passed. Everyone clearly respected him, but more than that, they seemed to genuinely like him. That said something about the kind of leader he was. 7 o'clock. William said as they reached the elevator. There's a great Italian place downtown, Antonelli's. That's fancy for a business dinner. Who said anything about business? Her heart did a small flip, but she kept her expression neutral. I'll be there. The elevator doors closed on his smile, and Bridget leaned against the wall, trying to process what had just happened. She had gone to fix a computer emergency and had run into her childhood best friend, who had somehow become a successful CEO who looked at her like she was the most interesting person in the world. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend Rachel. "How did the emergency call go?" "You would not believe me if I told you," Bridget typed back. She spent the rest of the afternoon in a daze, going through her usual tasks with half her mind while the other half kept drifting back to William. The way he had said her name. The way he remembered such specific details from their childhood. The way he had looked when asking her to dinner. By 6 o'clock, she was standing in front of her closet in a mild panic. Rachel had come over and was sitting on her bed, watching with amusement. "It's just dinner with an old friend," Rachel said. "Why are you trying on your 8th outfit?" "Because he's not just an old friend. He's William Oakes, CEO William Oakes. Have you seen his company's profile? He's worth millions, possibly tens of millions. And I showed up in jeans and a T-shirt this morning with my hair in a ponytail." Rachel stood and pulled a navy dress from the closet. "Wear this. It's professional enough that you could claim it's business, but nice enough that it's clearly not. And for the record, if he's the same friend you've told me about, the one who used to bring you flowers he picked from his mom's garden, he does not care what you're wearing." Bridget took the dress, remembering those flowers. Dandelions mostly, because William had been too young to understand they were weeds. She had kept every single one, pressing them in books until they crumbled. "What if this is a mistake?" she asked Rachel. "What if it's not?" She arrived at Antonelli's at 7 sharp, and William was already waiting outside. He had changed from his suit into dark jeans and a gray button-down that made his eyes look even bluer. His face lit up when he saw her. "You found it okay?" "I've lived in Seattle my whole life, William. I know where the fancy restaurants are, even if I do not usually eat at them." He held the door open for her. "Get used to it. I owe you for saving my presentation." The restaurant was as elegant as she had expected, with low lighting and white tablecloths. The host led them to a quiet corner table, and William ordered a bottle of wine after checking that she liked red. "Tell me everything," he said once they were settled. 20 years is a long time. Where did you go after we moved?" Bridget found herself opening up in ways she usually did not, talking about high school and college, her parents' surprise adoption of Marcus, her decision to leave her stable job and strike out on her own. William listened intently, asking questions and laughing at her stories. "You always had that independent streak," he said. "Remember when everyone said girls could not build a treehouse and you spent an entire summer proving them wrong? I remember you being the only boy who helped me. My dad was so mad when he found out I borrowed his tools. Worth it, though. That was the best treehouse in the neighborhood. Until it collapsed during that storm." Minor detail. They ordered food and William talked about his journey. After MIT, he had worked for a major manufacturing company in Boston, but had grown frustrated with their resistance to sustainable practices. He had sunk his savings into starting Oakhaven, maxing out credit cards and sleeping in his office for the first year. "It nearly broke me," he admitted. "There were nights I thought I had made the biggest mistake of my life. Then we landed our first major contract and everything changed. Now we're expanding to 3 new cities this year." "That's incredible, William. Really." "I kept thinking about something my dad used to say." "Do you remember him?" "Of course. He had that booming laugh and always had candy in his pockets." William's expression grew sad. "He passed away 4 years ago. Heart attack. Sudden." "Oh, William, I'm so sorry. He never got to see Oakhaven really take off, but I think he knew it would work." Right before he died, he told me he was proud of me for taking the risk. That conversation got me through a lot of hard days." He paused, then seemed to shake off the melancholy. "But he also told me not to work so hard that I forgot to live. I have not been great at taking that advice." No personal life. I dated someone for 2 years, Sarah. She was great, but she wanted someone who could be home for dinner every night and take weekends off. I was building a company. We wanted different things. He met her eyes. "That ended a year ago. Since then, I have been focused on work." "What about you?" Bridget sipped her wine. "Nothing serious. A few relationships that fizzled out. My last boyfriend said I was married to my computer." "Were you?" "Maybe a little. I love what I do, solving problems, building systems that work. It's like putting together a puzzle where you make the pieces." "That's exactly how I feel about building a company." Their food arrived, and they continued talking, the conversation flowing as naturally as it had when they were kids planning their next adventure. Bridget realized she was laughing more than she had in months, and William seemed more relaxed than he had been in his office. The CEO facade dropped entirely. "This is nice," he said as dessert arrived. "I did not realize how much I missed having someone to talk to. Really talk to." "Surely you have friends, business associates, golf partners, people I network with, not many real friends. Moving around a lot as a kid made it hard to maintain those connections, and then building the company consumed everything." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I miss you, Bridget. Not just the idea of childhood friendship, you specifically." Her breath caught. His hand was warm and solid around hers, and the touch sent electricity up her arm. "I miss you too," she admitted. "I used to wonder what happened to you, where you ended up. And now I'm trying very hard not to let you disappear again." His thumb traced a circle on her palm. "I meant what I said about the job offer, but I also want to be honest. The moment I saw you walk into my office today, it was not just nostalgia I felt. William, I know this is fast. I know we just reconnected, but I would like to take you out again, and again after that. I want to know everything about who you are now while remembering who we were then." Bridget's practical side screamed caution. Her heart, however, was doing something else entirely. "I would like that too. But let's keep the job offer separate, okay? I do not want either of us to feel obligated." "Fair enough. Though my offer stands regardless. You're brilliant at what you do." They lingered over coffee, neither wanting the evening to end. When William finally paid the bill despite her protests, it was nearly 11. "Let me walk you to your car," he said. The Seattle night was cool and clear, the street busy with people leaving restaurants and bars. William stayed close as they walked, his hand occasionally brushing hers in a way that felt both accidental and intentional. "I had a really good time tonight," Bridget said when they reached her car. "Me too." He hesitated, then leaned down and kissed her cheek. "Can I see you this weekend? Maybe something more casual. We could go to that park where we used to play, see if the old playground is still there. It's not. They tore it down years ago and built a community center. Then we'll go there. Saturday afternoon. It's a date." His smile was radiant. "Drive safe, Bridget Vale." She watched him walk back toward the restaurant where his own car was parked, and she felt like she was floating. 24 hours ago, William Oakes had been a memory. Now he was a man who made her heart race and her stomach flip and her thoughts scatter in the best possible way. Rachel called the moment Bridget got home. "Well, I think I'm in trouble. Good trouble or bad trouble, I have no idea. But Rachel, he's amazing. He's successful and driven, but also kind and funny, and he remembered the smallest details from when we were kids. And when he looks at me, I feel like I'm the only person in the world. You're falling for him. After one dinner. That is insane." "Love does not follow a timeline, Bridge. Who said anything about love? We're just reconnecting," Rachel laughed. Keep telling yourself that. The next few days passed in a blur of text messages and phone calls. William reached out constantly, never pushy but always present. He sent her photos of things that reminded him of their childhood: a Game Boy display in a store window, a treehouse some company was advertising, a dandelion growing through a crack in the sidewalk, still making wishes. He texted with that last photo, always. What would you wish for? That Saturday gets here faster. Bridget found herself counting down the hours. She took extra care getting ready Saturday morning, choosing casual jeans and a soft green sweater that Rachel insisted brought out her eyes. William picked her up at noon in a BMW that was nice but not ostentatious. No driver, she teased. I saved the company car for business. This is personal. They drove to the old neighborhood, both of them exclaiming as they saw familiar landmarks. The corner store where they had bought candy was now a coffee shop. The elementary school looked smaller than they remembered. The park had indeed changed, but the big oak tree they had climbed dozens of times was still standing. Look, William said, pointing at the trunk. Is that? They walked closer and Bridget gasped. Carved into the bark, barely visible now but still there, were their initials, W.O. plus B.V., surrounded by a lopsided heart. She had forgotten about that. I cannot believe it's still here, she said softly. I carved that the summer before we moved. I was 12 and thought I was so smooth. William traced the letters with his finger. I had such a crush on you. You did. You honestly did not know. I brought you flowers, Bridget. I followed you around like a puppy. We were kids. I thought we were just best friends. We were, but even then I knew you were special. He turned to look at her. That has not changed. They spent the afternoon exploring, talking, and simply being together. William bought them hot dogs from a street vendor, and they sat on a bench feeding pieces to the birds. When a group of kids ran past playing tag, they smiled at each other. Think they'll still be friends in 20 years? Bridget asked, if they're lucky. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, William drove them to the waterfront. They walked along the pier, the wind whipping Bridget's hair around her face. William reached out and tucked a strand behind her ear, his hand lingering. I want to kiss you, he said quietly. I have wanted to since the moment I saw you in my office, but I also do not want to rush this. You're too important. Bridget's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. What if I want you to kiss me? He smiled, slow and warm, and cupped her face in his hands. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid of breaking something fragile. Then Bridget leaned into him, and the kiss deepened. 20 years of wondering and waiting pouring into the connection between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, William rested his forehead against hers. Wow. Yeah. Wow. They stood there holding each other as the sky darkened and the city lights began to twinkle around them. Bridget felt like she had stepped into a dream, the kind she had stopped believing in somewhere around her third failed relationship. This is crazy, she whispered. 2 weeks ago, I did not even know you were back in Seattle. The best things in life usually are crazy. William pulled back enough to meet her eyes. But I need you to know something. I am serious about this, about you. I do not do casual well. If that scares you, tell me now. It terrifies me, but I'm serious too. Over the following weeks, they fell into a rhythm. William was busy with the company expansion, often working 12-hour days, but he made time for Bridget. Breakfast dates before work, lunch meetings that had nothing to do with business, late-night phone calls where they talked until one of them fell asleep. Bridget met William's mother, Margaret, who cried when she saw her. Little Bridget Vale, all grown up. I always hoped you and William would find each other again. Mom, William groaned, embarrassed. What? You talked about her for years after we moved. Bridget would have loved this. I wonder what Bridget is doing. It was adorable. Bridget met William's executive team over dinner one evening. They were impressed with her technical knowledge, and by the end of the night, 3 of them had handed her business cards asking for consulting services. "You're making me look bad," William joked as they left. "They like you better than me." "That is because I'm not their boss. I cannot fire them." "You could never fire anyone. You're too nice." "I'm practical. There is a difference." A month into their relationship, William took her to his house for the first time. It was in a wealthy suburb overlooking Lake Washington, modern and beautifully designed, but somehow still warm and welcoming. "This is where you live?" Bridget asked, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows and open floor plan. "I bought it last year. Way too big for one person, but I kept thinking about having a family someday. Kids who could run around the yard and swim in the lake." He looked almost shy. "Does that sound stupid?" "It sounds nice." He showed her around, and she noticed the little touches that made it his. Photos of his parents, books stacked on every surface, a collection of vintage video games displayed on shelves in his home office. "You kept them," she said, pointing at the Game Boy collection. "Of course. Best investment I ever made. Some of these are worth a fortune now." They cooked dinner together, working side by side in his enormous kitchen. William turned out to be a competent cook, and Bridget was happy to chop vegetables and stir sauce while he handled the more complicated parts. "This is domestic," she observed. "Is that okay?" "It's perfect." After dinner, they curled up on his couch watching a movie, though neither paid much attention to the screen. William played with her hair, and she traced patterns on his arm, both of them content in the comfortable silence. "Stay tonight," William said during a commercial break. "I have a guest room, or you could stay with me. No pressure either way. I just do not want you to leave yet." Bridget knew she should be cautious. They had only been officially together for a month. But being with William felt right in a way nothing else ever had. "Okay." She woke up in his arms the next morning to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee brewing. William was already awake, watching her with a soft expression. "Morning," he said, his voice rough from sleep. "What time is it?" "Early. 7. I'm usually up by 6, but you look too peaceful to disturb. You watch me sleep. That is creepy. Or romantic. Let's go with romantic." They spent the morning being lazy, something William admitted he rarely did. They made breakfast together, read the news on their tablets, and talked about nothing and everything. It was ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. "I could get used to this," William said as they cleaned up. "Lazy Sundays, being with you." 2 months into their relationship, Bridget finally agreed to take on a contract with Oakhaven Industries. William kept his promise to keep business and personal separate, assigning her to work with his CTO rather than directly with him. She spent 3 days a week at the office, rebuilding their IT infrastructure from the ground up. The work was challenging and engaging, exactly what she loved. She met the people who worked there, learned about the products they made, and understood why William was so passionate about the company. They were genuinely making a difference, creating sustainable materials that could change how buildings were constructed. "You've made quite an impression," the CTO told her one afternoon. "Half the engineering team wants to recruit you full-time." "I like freelancing." William said you would say that, but the offer stands. "We could use someone with your vision on staff permanently." Bridget thought about it more seriously than she expected. She had always valued her independence, but there was something appealing about being part of building something bigger than herself. And the fact that it was William's dream made it even more compelling. That night, she brought it up over dinner at her apartment. "Your CTO made me a job offer today." William looked up from his pasta. "Did he? I told him he could, but I did not know if he actually would. What did you say? I said I would think about it. And I do not know. I have been freelancing for 3 years. I love the freedom. But Oakhaven is different. The work matters. What does your gut tell you? She smiled. My gut is usually pretty reliable. It told me to have dinner with you that first night. And look how well that turned out. They talked through the pros and cons, and William was careful never to pressure her one way or another. In the end, Bridget decided to accept a part-time position that would let her maintain some freelance clients while building Oakhaven systems. It was a compromise that felt right. The holidays arrived, and for the first time in years, Bridget was excited about them. William invited her to spend Thanksgiving with his mother, and she brought him to her family's Christmas celebration. Her parents loved him immediately, and Marcus bonded with him over basketball. He's good for you, her mother said while they were alone in the kitchen. I have not seen you this happy in years. I'm a little scared, Mom. It feels too good to be true. Honey, sometimes things are just good. Let yourself enjoy it. New Year's Eve, William threw a party at his house for his employees and friends. Bridget wore a gold dress that made her feel like $1 million, and William could not take his eyes off her all night. At midnight, as fireworks exploded over the lake and everyone counted down, he pulled her aside onto the balcony. I love you, he said as the clock struck 12. I have probably loved you since we were kids, and I definitely love you now. I know it has only been a few months, but I'm sure. Tears sprang to her eyes. I love you too, so much it scares me. He kissed her as the fireworks boomed around them, and Bridget felt like she was in a movie. This was the moment she would remember forever, the moment when everything became real. The new year brought changes. William's company landed a massive contract with a national construction firm, which meant expanding faster than anticipated. He was traveling more, and Bridget was working longer hours managing the IT needs of 3 new offices. They made it work. Video calls when he was away. Surprise visits when they could manage it. Text messages throughout the day. It was not always easy, but they were committed to each other. In March, Bridget moved into William's house. It happened gradually, with her spending more nights there than at her own apartment, until one day William asked, "Why are you still paying rent when you live here?" She had her own office where she could work, her own space in the massive walk-in closet, and a key that William had made with a small dandelion engraved on it. "So you always remember to make wishes," he said when he gave it to her. Life settled into a comfortable routine. They worked hard during the week and reserved weekends for each other. They took cooking classes together. They went hiking in the mountains. They visited the old neighborhood and walked past their childhood homes, making up stories about the people who lived there now. 6 months after New Year's Eve, William planned a surprise trip for Bridget's birthday. He would not tell her where they were going, just that she should pack for warm weather and adventure. They flew to Costa Rica, and William had rented a villa overlooking the ocean. It was paradise, private and beautiful, and exactly what Bridget needed after months of intense work. "How did you know?" she asked as they sat on the terrace watching the sunset their first evening there. "Know what? That this is exactly what I needed. Time away from screens and schedules and everything. Because I needed it too. We've been grinding so hard this year. I wanted to give us a chance to just breathe." They spent a week swimming, exploring, eating amazing food, and rediscovering each other away from the demands of regular life. Bridget felt herself relax in ways she had not in months. On their last night, William took her to a secluded beach at sunset. They walked along the water, hand in hand, not talking, just being together. "I want to ask you something," William said, stopping, "and you can say no. There is no pressure, but I need you to know what I'm thinking. Okay. When I imagine my future, you're in it. Every part of it. Building the company, yes, but also building a life. A family. Growing old together, all of it. He took her hands. I know we said we would take things slow. I know it has less than a year. But Bridget, I am more sure of you than I have ever been of anything. Her heart was racing. William. I'm not proposing, not yet. I want to do that right the way you deserve. But I need you to know that is where my head is, where my heart is. And if that is not what you want, or if you need more time, tell me now. Bridget felt tears streaming down her face. I want that too, all of it, with you. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned purple and gold. They stood there until the stars came out, making plans and promises and dreams. Back in Seattle, life took on new meaning. Every decision they made was with their shared future in mind. When Bridget accepted a full-time position at Oakhaven as director of IT, it was because she wanted to build something lasting. When William turned down an acquisition offer that would have made him even wealthier but required relocating, it was because he could not imagine leaving the life they were building. They talked about marriage constantly, joking about it and hinting at it and dancing around the actual proposal. Bridget knew it was coming, but she did not know when or how. One Saturday in October, almost exactly a year after they had reconnected, William told her they were going out. He would not say where, just that she should dress comfortably. He drove them to the old neighborhood, and Bridget laughed. We haven't been here in months. I know. I wanted to come back. They walked through the park, looking at the oak tree with their carved initials. William had brought a picnic, and they sat under the tree eating sandwiches and remembering. I carved something else that summer, William said casually. Did you ever notice? What do you mean? He pointed higher up on the trunk. Bridget stood and looked, and there, barely visible, were the words, "Will you?" She turned back to him, and he was on one knee, holding a ring box. Bridget Vale, I loved you when we were kids, even though I did not have the words for it. I loved you when we were apart, even though I did not realize it. And I love you now with everything I am. You make me better. You make me happy. You make me want to be the kind of man who deserves you. Will you marry me? She was crying and laughing at the same time. Yes. Yes, of course, yes. The ring was perfect, a simple diamond on a platinum band with tiny dandelions etched into the sides. He slipped it onto her finger and it fit like it had been made for her, which of course it had. I cannot believe you carved that message 20 years ago, she said, looking back at the tree. I did not. I carved it last week, but the romantic backstory sounded better. She swatted his arm, laughing. You're terrible. You're stuck with me now. They called everyone from the park, too excited to wait. Margaret cried. Bridget's parents cheered. Marcus demanded to be best man even though they had not set a date yet. Rachel screamed so loud Bridget had to hold the phone away from her ear. The engagement was a whirlwind. They decided on a spring wedding, giving them 6 months to plan. Margaret and Bridget's mother took charge of most of the details, which was fine with both of them. They were too busy with work and too wrapped up in each other to care much about flowers and seating charts. What they did care about was their life together. They spent evenings talking about what kind of marriage they wanted to have, how they would handle conflicts, how they would balance work and personal time, how many kids they wanted and when. 2 at least, Bridget said one night as they lay in bed, maybe 3. I always wanted a big family. 4. Let's start with 1 and see how we feel. William laughed. Deal. The wedding was in April in a garden overlooking Puget Sound. It was smaller than William's status might have dictated. Just close friends and family. Exactly what they both wanted. Bridget walked down the aisle on her father's arm, wearing a simple ivory dress that made her feel beautiful without trying too hard. but she barely noticed anything except William waiting at the end of the aisle, his eyes shining with tears. "You're stunning," he whispered when she reached him. "You're not so bad yourself." The ceremony was short and sweet. They had written their own vows, promising to be partners in everything, to support each other's dreams, to never go to bed angry, to always make time for each other no matter how busy life got. "I promise to bring you dandelions," William said, and everyone laughed. "I promise not to delete your saved games," Bridget replied. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, William kissed her like he had been waiting his whole life for this moment. Because, in many ways, he had. The reception was joyful and loud, full of dancing and laughter and toasts that ranged from heartfelt to embarrassing. Marcus told stories about Bridget's teenage years that made William laugh until he cried. Margaret shared photos of young William that proved he had been adorably nerdy. As the sun set and the party continued, William pulled Bridget away for a private moment on the terrace. "Hi, wife," he said. "Hi, husband. How are you feeling? Happy, overwhelmed, perfect?" She rested her head on his shoulder. Who would have thought that emergency IT call would lead to this? Fate has a sense of humor. "You really believe in fate?" "I believe we were supposed to find each other again. Whether that is fate or luck or just the universe being kind, I do not know, but I'm grateful for it every day." They stood there watching the stars come out, holding each other and thinking about the future stretching before them. Their honeymoon was 2 weeks in Italy, exploring Rome and Florence and the Amalfi Coast. They ate too much pasta, drank too much wine, and walked until their feet hurt every day. It was perfect. "We should move here," Bridget joked as they sat at a cafe overlooking the Mediterranean. "Say the word, I'll make it happen." "You would not you, for you? Anything." Back in Seattle, they threw themselves into married life with the same enthusiasm they brought to everything else. Bridget was promoted to Chief Technology Officer, the first woman in Oakhaven's executive suite. William was named one of the city's top young entrepreneurs by a business magazine. But what mattered most to them happened at home. Cooking together, watching terrible movies, working in comfortable silence in his office, her at one desk and him at the other, having friends over for game nights, visiting their families. A year after the wedding, Bridget found out she was pregnant. They had been trying for a few months, and she had started to worry it would not happen easily. When the test showed positive, she stared at it for 10 minutes before calling William at work. "Can you come home?" she asked. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Just come home." He made it in 20 minutes, bursting through the door looking panicked. "What happened?" She held up the test. His face went through about 6 different expressions in 3 seconds before landing on pure joy. "Are you serious?" "We're having a baby. We're having a baby." He picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing and crying. Then he set her down gently, suddenly cautious. "Should I have done that? Is spinning okay when you're pregnant? I'm like 2 weeks along, William. I'm not fragile." "You're carrying our baby. You're the most precious thing in the world." The pregnancy was relatively easy, though Bridget developed an intense craving for pickles that William found endlessly amusing. He went overboard preparing, reading every parenting book he could find and baby-proofing the house when she was only 4 months along. "The baby is not even going to crawl for months after it's born," she pointed out. "Better safe than sorry." They found out they were having a girl at the 20-week ultrasound. William cried, and Bridget felt a surge of love so intense she thought her heart might burst. "A daughter," William kept saying. "We're having a daughter." They named her Caroline after William's father. She was born in December, just before the holidays, with a full head of dark hair and her father's blue eyes. William was a natural father, patient and gentle, and completely besotted. He changed diapers without complaint, walked the floor with her when she was fussy, and sang off-key lullabies that somehow worked. Bridget watched him with their daughter and fell in love with him all over again. This was the boy who had brought her dandelions, grown into a man who brought their baby girl the world. "What are you thinking?" William asked one night as they sat together, Caroline asleep between them. "That I'm the luckiest person alive. That's my line." Life with a baby was chaotic and exhausting and wonderful. They took turns with night feedings. They figured out how to work while caring for an infant. They celebrated every milestone like it was a miracle, which to them it was. Caroline was 6 months old when Bridget found out she was pregnant again. They had not been trying, but they were not preventing either, and apparently their bodies had decided to be efficient. 2 under 2, William said, slightly dazed. "We're really doing this. Are you okay with it?" "Are you kidding? This is everything I ever wanted." Their son, Christopher, was born when Caroline was 15 months old. He had Bridget's green eyes and an easy temperament that was a blessing with an active toddler in the house. The years that followed were a blur of diapers and daycare, school plays and soccer games, bedtime stories and family dinners. William scaled back his hours at work, promoting his COO to president so he could focus on being present for his family. Bridget shifted to consulting part-time, allowing her to work from home most days. They bought a bigger house with a yard for the kids to play in. They took family vacations to national parks and theme parks and eventually back to their old neighborhood, showing Caroline and Christopher the tree with the carved initials. "You and Daddy were friends when you were little?" Caroline asked, fascinated. "Best friends," Bridget confirmed. "And then you grew up and got married?" "Eventually, yes." "That's a good story." William caught Bridget's eye over their daughter's head and smiled. Yes, it was a good story, a great one. The kind she had stopped believing in before fate or luck or the universe had brought her back to the one person who had always been meant to be hers. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they went back to Antonelli's, the restaurant where they had their first date. Margaret stayed with the kids, shooing them out the door and telling them not to hurry back. 10 years, Bridget said, raising her wine glass. "Can you believe it? Best 10 years of my life. Well, technically 12 if you count from when we reconnected. 22 if you count our childhood. Then let's count those too. 22 years of loving you in one way or another." They talked about everything and nothing, the way they always did. The kids and work, upcoming projects and plans for the future. But they also talked about the past, remembering that first dinner and all the moments that had led them here. "You ever wonder what would have happened if your systems had not crashed that day?" Bridget asked. "All the time. Then I remember I would have found you eventually. I would have searched until I did." "That's cheesy." "It's true. You were always the one, Bridget. Even when I did not know I was looking for you, I was." Later that night, lying in bed in their quiet house, kids asleep down the hall, Bridget thought about the girl she had been at 27. Single, focused on work, convinced that the kind of love she read about in books did not exist in real life. She had been so wrong. "I love you," she whispered to William, who was nearly asleep beside her. "I love you more," he mumbled. "Not possible." He pulled her closer, and she felt his smile against her hair. "We'll call it a tie." 3 years later, they had another surprise. Bridget was 40 and had assumed their family was complete when she started feeling familiar symptoms. The pregnancy test confirmed what she suspected. "Number 3, William said, looking at the test. "We're clearly incapable of stopping." "Are you unhappy about it? Are you kidding?" "I'm thrilled. Terrified, but thrilled." Emma was born when Caroline was 8 and Christopher was 7, and her older siblings were obsessed with her. They fought over who got to help with bottles and who got to pick her outfit each morning. "We're raising good humans," Bridget observed one day, watching Caroline gently rock Emma while Christopher sang to her. "We're raising amazing humans. They get that from you. They get it from both of us." When Caroline turned 10, they took the whole family back to Italy, wanting to share the place that had been so special to them. They visited the same towns, ate at some of the same restaurants, and made new memories together. "This place is magic," Caroline declared as they sat at that same cafe overlooking the Mediterranean. "It really is," William agreed, holding Bridget's hand under the table. Years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and joys. They navigated teenage years and college applications. They celebrated as Oakhaven Industries went public, making William's net worth soar into truly astronomical territory. They marked milestones and mourned losses, including Margaret's peaceful passing when Emma was 12. Through all of it, they held on to each other. They still had date nights. They still carved out time just for them. They still looked at each other across crowded rooms and felt that spark, that recognition of having found the one person who made life make sense. Caroline graduated from college with a degree in environmental engineering, wanting to follow in her father's footsteps. Christopher became a teacher, patient and kind like his mother. Emma was still finding her way, but she had time. "We did good," William said at Caroline's graduation, watching their daughter receive her diploma. "We did great," Bridget corrected. They were in their 50s now, graying and slowing down a bit, but still fundamentally them. William still brought her flowers, though now they were from florists instead of his mother's garden. Bridget still fixed his computer problems, though now she did it with reading glasses perched on her nose. On their 25th wedding anniversary, they renewed their vows in their backyard, surrounded by their children and grandchildren. Yes, grandchildren. Caroline had married young and already had 2 babies of her own. "25 years ago, I promised to love you forever," William said, holding both her hands. "That turned out to be the easiest promise I ever kept. You've made every day an adventure, every challenge manageable, every joy sweeter. I can't wait to see what the next 25 years bring." Bridget was crying happy tears. "You've been my best friend, my partner, my everything. From dandelions to diamonds, from tree houses to this beautiful life we built together. I love you more today than I did 25 years ago, and I'll love you more tomorrow than I do today." Their kids cheered. The grandchildren, too young to understand but caught up in the emotion, clapped their chubby hands. And William kissed his wife under the same trees where their children had played, in the yard of the home they had filled with love. That night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, they sat on their back patio watching the stars. "You remember what you wished for?" William asked. "That day I sent you the picture of the dandelion. I wished that whatever was happening between us would be real. That it would last." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I should have been more specific. This is better than any wish I could have imagined. Want to know what I wished for?" "What?" "That I would get to spend the rest of my life making you happy. Mission accomplished." They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching the stars wheel overhead. 2 kids from the neighborhood who had found each other, lost each other, and found each other again. 2 souls that had always been meant to end up exactly here, in this moment, in this life they had built together. Somewhere in the yard, a dandelion had gone to seed. The wind picked up, scattering the white fluff into the air like tiny wishes floating up to the universe. Bridget watched them go and smiled. She did not need wishes anymore. Everything she had ever wanted was right here, holding her hand, growing old beside her, loving her the way she had always dreamed of being loved. It had started with an emergency IT call and a childhood friend she had not seen in 20 years. It had become the greatest love story she could have imagined. And as they walked back into their house, ready for bed but never ready to let go of each other's hands, Bridget knew this was exactly where she was always meant to be, home with William forever.